In the heart of spring in Iowa, the vast farmland stretched out like a forgotten canvas, the fields of corn yet to be sown, lying barren under a pale blue sky. The old farmhouse stood silent, its weathered wooden siding coated in a thin layer of dust from years of neglect. Machinery rusted in the yard, and the air carried the faint scent of damp earth and wildflowers pushing through the cracks. Amelia Grace, 28 years old, sat in her sleek black SUV, staring through the tinted windshield at the place she hadn't seen in 12 years, the home of her late grandmother who had passed away just 3 days earlier. She gripped the steering wheel, her manicured nails digging into the leather. As the sole heir, Amelia had flown in from New York with one goal: sell the property and return to her life of boardrooms and high-rises. The farmhouse felt like a relic from a childhood she preferred to forget, endless summers of chores, the stern guidance of her grandmother Eleanor, and the isolation of rural life. Now, with the workers gone after the funeral and the house echoing with emptiness, it was just an asset to liquidate. She stepped out, her designer boots sinking slightly into the soft ground, and scanned the yard. Her eyes landed on the old tractor slumped in the middle, like a lifeless beast, its paint chipped and tires deflated. That tractor. It hit her like a sudden gust of wind. It was the same one her grandmother had used every morning to head to the fields, the one Eleanor had taught her to drive when she was just 9 years old. Amelia could almost hear the old woman's voice, gravelly from years of shouting over engine noise. "If you can fix it, girl, it means you still love this place." The memory stirred something uncomfortable in her chest, a mix of nostalgia and resentment. She had no intention of fixing anything. Pulling out her phone, she dialed a towing company to haul the relic away to scrap. The next morning, Amelia woke to the sound of birds and the faint rumble of an engine outside. She pulled on a robe and stepped onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, her golden hair tousled from sleep. A silver pickup truck had pulled up to the gate, its bed loaded with tools and spare parts. A man climbed out, tall and solid, with dark brown hair tousled by the breeze, wearing a white shirt faded from sun and dirt sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. He carried a toolbox, his movements purposeful but unhurried. "Morning, ma'am," he called out, tipping his head in greeting. "I'm Wyatt Carson. I work for Robert down the west fence line. He mentioned you had an old tractor here that might need some attention." Amelia narrowed her eyes, crossing her arms. "I didn't hire anyone. I'm actually having it towed for scrap." Wyatt paused, glancing at the machine. "If you don't mind, I could take a look. No charge. I just hate seeing good equipment rot away like that." She studied him. His steady gaze, the calluses on his hands, the quiet confidence. "You a mechanic. Was in the military, now farming and fixing what I can to make ends meet." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Fine. Suit yourself. It hasn't run in 12 years. Wyatt set to work without another word, kneeling beside the tractor and popping the hood. He wiped away layers of rust with a rag, methodically checking hoses, oiling joints, and tightening bolts. His hands moved with precision, treating the machine like something fragile, yet resilient. Amelia watched from the porch, sipping her coffee, intrigued despite herself. He wasn't like the men she knew in the city, no polished suits, no cologne masking ambition, no probing questions about her career or status. He just worked focused and silent, as if the tractor deserved his full respect. Nearly an hour passed in the crisp morning air. Then, with a turn of the key, the engine sputtered once-twice before roaring to life with a deep rumbling growl. The vibrations shook the ground slightly, and black smoke puffed from the exhaust before clearing. Wyatt stepped back, wiping his hands on his shirt, a small smile breaking through. Amelia's breath caught. She hadn't expected it to start, hadn't expected the rush of emotion that followed. The sound echoed memories of her grandmother's mornings, the way Eleanor would wave from the seat as she headed out. For the first time since arriving, Amelia felt a genuine smile tug at her lips, a soft, involuntary one that surprised even her. It was as if the old woman was nodding from somewhere beyond, approving in her quiet way. "Didn't think it'd wake up," she said, approaching. "It was just sleeping." Wyatt replied, his voice calm. "Like a lot of things around here. You do this for strangers, often fix things for free. Not always. But some things are worth saving before they're gone for good." She hesitated, then extended her hand. "I'm Leah." No last name. No mention of the Grace family legacy that owned half the county's land. Wyatt shook her hand firmly, his grip warm and steady. No questions, no prying. "Nice to meet you, Leah," he said simply. "I'm Wyatt." That afternoon, Amelia retreated to the upstairs bedroom, peering through the lace curtains. Below, Wyatt was testing the tractor, driving it in a slow circle around the yard. The wind caught his shirt, revealing the sweat on his back, but he wore a light, satisfied grin, as if reviving the machine had brought him a quiet joy. He was strange, this man, unassuming, kind, without expectation. For the first time in years, something stirred in her, a faint hum like an engine coming back to life. The next morning, Amelia stirred awake to the faint hum of an engine outside, a sound that pulled her from a restless sleep, filled with dreams of endless fields and her grandmother's stern voice. She glanced at the clock barely past dawn and peered through the window. Wyatt's silver pickup was parked in the yard again, and he was already at work, crouched beneath the tractor, scrubbing away layers of dried mud with a brush and hose. Beside him sat a small cooler, with what looked like sandwiches and a thermos of coffee steam rising from the lid in the cool air. She stepped onto the porch, wrapping her arms around herself against the morning chill. "I don't recall hiring you for the full day," she called out, her tone half joking, half curious. Wyatt looked up, wiping water from his hands on his gray t-shirt now streaked with grime. He offered an easy smile. Not for the job, just figured it deserved a little more care. His eyes flicked to the house, then back to her. "And maybe its new owner does too." Amelia felt a flicker of warmth at his words, but she pushed it aside, descending the steps to stand nearby. Wyatt worked methodically, his movements sufficient, yet gentle, as if coaxing the machine back to full life. He didn't push for conversation, but as the sun climbed higher, she found herself asking questions. "Why don't you leave this small town? There must be bigger opportunities out there." He paused, tightening a bolt before responding. "I did leave once. Joined the military, saw places I never imagined. But war teaches you that peace isn't about where you are, it's about what's in here." He tapped his chest lightly. "This land keeps me grounded, and fixing things, it helps." "Where's your heart, then?" she pressed, surprised at her own boldness. "Right here," he said, simply gesturing to the fields, "with what's been left behind by others." From that day on, Wyatt's presence became a quiet routine. He arrived early, tools in hand, replacing worn belts, sharpening blades, and even mending the old trailer hitched to the tractor. No payment asked, no obligations imposed. Amelia watched from the sidelines at first, then gradually joined him on the porch steps with tea in hand, listening as he explained the hum of a misaligned engine or the feel of a loose axle. She didn't grasp every detail, but his voice, steady and unhurried, drew her in. It was unlike the rushed negotiations and superficial chatter of her New York life. Here, words carried weight without pretense. One overcast afternoon, as light rain pattered on the tin roof of the porch, Wyatt worked on a bent metal piece from the trailer, his hands steady despite the damp. Amelia sat nearby, her gaze distant. "My grandmother was tough," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Loved in her own quiet way. She always said you only deserve to inherit if you know how to hold on to something." Wyatt nodded without looking up. "Sounds like she knew the value of roots." The rain softened, and Amelia hesitated before asking, "Have you lost someone?" He set down his tool, his expression clouding for a moment. "My brother, in Afghanistan. I was driving the vehicle that day. I walked away, he didn't." His voice was even, but the pain lingered in his eyes. "That's why I don't leave things behind if there's still life in them. Machines, people." "Whatever." Amelia turned away, swallowing the lump in her throat. This man wasn't just mending metal, he was piecing together broken parts of the world, including perhaps her own guarded heart. That evening alone, in the dimly lit study, Amelia opened her laptop. The screen glowed with emails from her New York firm meetings, investment proposals, the life she had built far from here. Her finger hovered over the confirmation for the land sale, but instead she typed into the search bar, "Wyatt Carson Military Iowa Record." The results were sparse, an old local article about a veteran returning home starting over with a beat-up truck and a makeshift repair shop. No fanfare, no glory, just quiet resilience. The next morning, Wyatt asked casually as he checked the tractor's steering, You seem familiar with this place, Leah. Lived here before. Visited Summers as a kid, she replied, avoiding his eyes. My grandmother, she used to live here. Not many good memories, though. He nodded, not pressing further. You staying long? Not sure. Maybe until the tractor's running smooth. Or until you are, he said lightly, but his words hung in the air like a gentle challenge. Later that day, Wyatt sliced his hand on a sharp edge while adjusting a gear. Blood welled up, and Amelia insisted on tending to it, fetching a first aid kit, and gently cleaning the wound with antiseptic, then wrapping it in gauze. You help everyone like this, she asked, her fingers lingering on his palm. Only what still has a chance to run, he replied, his gaze meeting hers. You included. In that moment, as she held his hand, Amelia felt a pull she hadn't anticipated, a quiet trust blooming amid the rust and rain. But beneath it lurked her secret, the weight of her real name and intentions threatening to unravel everything. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm that felt almost too perfect, the kind of fragile peace that Amelia knew could shatter with one wrong move. Wyatt expanded his efforts beyond the tractor, tackling the old barn with its sagging roof and splintered doors. He arrived each morning with fresh lumber and nails, patching holes, reinforcing beams, and clearing out decades of accumulated debris. No one had asked him to. He simply did it, his presence a steady anchor in the otherwise empty expanse of the farm. Amelia found herself drawn into this new routine, no longer just observing, but participating in small ways, handing him tools, holding boards steady, even sweeping sawdust from the floor. The air filled with the scent of fresh-cut wood and earth, and for the first time the property felt less like a burden and more like a canvas being restored. In those sun-dappled afternoons, Amelia experienced a simplicity she had never known in New York. She accompanied Wyatt to the local market, where vendors greeted him by name and shared stories of past harvests. They wandered the stalls, picking up fresh produce and chatting with an elderly corn farmer about the upcoming planting season. A young girl at one booth handed Amelia a crayon drawing, scribbling, "Miss Leah is the prettiest on the farm," across the top. Amelia laughed, a genuine, unforced sound, and tucked the paper into her pocket. Wyatt watched her with a quiet smile, and in those moments everything seemed aligned. No pretense, no expectations, just the ease of being seen as ordinary. But beneath the warmth lurked a growing unease. This life felt too good, too vulnerable, like a dream she might wake from at any second. The first crack appeared one crisp morning when Wyatt headed to the backyard to retrieve a forgotten wrench set. As he approached, he overheard Amelia on the porch, her back to him, speaking into her phone in a hushed, professional tone. "I'll sign, but I need more time. Yes, I know the investment hinges on Grace Properties' capital injection, but I'm out of town right now. No, don't wire the funds before the lawyer reviews. I'll handle the terms myself." She ended the call abruptly, turning to find him standing there. Her smile faltered for a split second before recovering. "Just a friend," she said quickly. "Investment stuff. Lots of paperwork." Wyatt nodded, his expression unchanging, but a shadow crossed his eyes. He returned to his work without comment, though the silence between them felt heavier that day. The next hint came during a trip to the town's dusty old bookstore, a quaint shop lined with shelves of faded volumes and the faint smell of aged paper. As they browsed, the elderly owner peered over his glasses at Amelia, his face lighting up with recognition. "You look just like Eleanor Grace," he said, leaning on the counter. "Related to her, are you—" Amelia froze her hand midway to a book. "No, sir," she replied smoothly, forcing a smile. "Just one of those faces, I guess." The man chuckled and shuffled away, but Wyatt's gaze lingered on her a moment longer, thoughtful and unreadable. The truth unraveled fully the following afternoon when Jared, an old army buddy of Wyatt's, now working at the town hall, dropped by the farm with a delivery of building supplies. He unloaded the crates, chatting idly until Amelia stepped out to greet them. Jared's eyes widened, and he pulled Wyatt aside. "You know who she is, right? Leah," Wyatt said evenly. "The one inheriting this place." Jared shook his head, pulling out his phone. "No, man. That's Amelia Grace, shareholder in Grace Property. Daughter of Albert Grace, the guy who owned half the real estate in the Midwest." He tapped the screen, bringing up an article with her photo, Amelia, in a sleek black dress at a corporate event, the headline dubbing her the steel heiress of Midwest real estate. Wyatt stared at the image, his jaw tightening. You sure, positive, saw her name on some land docs at the office? That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the yard, Wyatt arrived later than usual. No toolbox, no easy grin. He found Amelia on the porch arranging wildflowers in a vase. You're Amelia Grace, he said flatly without preamble. She went still, her fingers crushing a stem. Yes. The heir to this farm and half the county. The one planning to sell it all, and you've been lying to me this whole time. Amelia nodded slowly, setting the vase down. I hid it because I was afraid you'd walk away if you knew who I really was. You think I'd care about your money? That I'd stick around because you seemed ordinary? His voice rose slightly, edged with hurt. I've lost my brother, fixed things others called worthless. You think I couldn't handle the truth? It's not that I didn't trust you, she whispered. It's that I didn't trust myself to be enough without the lie. Wyatt turned away, staring at the horizon. No shouts, no accusations, just a quiet disappointment that cut deeper than words. I came here to fix a machine, he said finally. You fixed something in me, but it started with a deception. He walked to his truck, the door slamming shut like a final punctuation. Amelia didn't chase him. She stood frozen, tears blurring her vision, the ache in her chest raw and unfamiliar, not from losing assets, but from losing someone she hadn't realized mattered so much. The tractor sat silent in the yard, a reminder of what had been revived only to be left behind again. 3 days dragged by in a haze of silence that blanketed the farm like a heavy fog. The once familiar sounds of Wyatt's tools clanging and the tractor's occasional rumble were absent, leaving only the whisper of wind through the empty fields and the distant call of birds. Amelia moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding the porch where they had shared so many afternoons. She didn't tend to the budding flowers or flip through her grandmother's old journals. Instead, she sat by the window staring at the revived tractor in the yard, polished functional, a testament to what had been mended and then abandoned. The ache in her chest grew with each passing hour, a regret not born from financial loss, but from the void left by someone who had seen her without the armor of her name. On the fourth morning, a soft knock echoed through the quiet house. Amelia opened the door to find Mr. Henry, an elderly neighbor who had known her grandmother for decades, standing on the porch with his hat in hand. His face was lined with years of sun and stories, and he held a small embroidered handkerchief bearing Eleanor's initials. "Mind if I come in, miss?" he asked gently. They sat in the kitchen, steam rising from fresh cups of tea. Henry cleared his throat. "You know, Wyatt saved your grandmother's life once." "Didn't he ever tell you?" Amelia's eyes widened. "No. What happened?" 3 years back, Eleanor had a small stroke while out on that old tractor in the fields. No one around for miles, but Wyatt was driving by, saw the smoke acting funny from the engine. He jumped the fence, carried her to his truck, and got her to the clinic just in time. Doctors said another few minutes and she might not have made it. Amelia leaned forward, her hands trembling around her mug. "Why didn't he say anything?" Henry shrugged. "Boy turned down her offer to pay him back, said, 'I'm just glad she's still here to keep this land alive.' That's Wyatt for you, fixes what's broken without expecting a thing." As Henry spoke, Amelia felt a wave of clarity wash over her, mingled with shame. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper yellowed with age. "Eleanor gave this to me before she passed. Said to deliver it if you came back and things had aligned." Amelia unfolded the letter, her grandmother's precise handwriting staring back at her. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. You grew up in a world that rushes everything, but if you've returned here, your heart isn't as hardened as you think. And if you've met Wyatt Carson, don't let him slip away. He's not rich in money, but he understands worth. If you can hold on to him, it means you still know how to love what's real." Tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks, hot and unchecked. For the first time, she sobbed openly. Not the controlled grief of boardrooms, but raw, unfiltered release. Henry patted her hand awkwardly before leaving his parting words simple. "Some things deserve a second chance, miss." The next day, driven by a resolve she hadn't felt in years, Amelia drove into town, her SUV kicking up dust on the rural roads. She parked outside the small unmarked repair shop where Wyatt worked odd jobs. The place was empty tools scattered on benches, but no sign of him. She asked around the mechanic at the gas station, the diner owner, but no one knew where he had gone. Defeated but determined, she left a note on the workbench sealed in a plain envelope. Wyatt, I'm Amelia Grace, the one who lied to you, afraid you'd leave if you knew the truth. But hiding pushed you away anyway. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just for you to come back, not because I deserve it, but because I want to be better with you by my side. 2 days later, as Amelia knelt beside the tractor, clumsily wiping the fan blades with a rag, her hands smeared with grease for the first time in her life, she heard the familiar rumble of a truck pulling into the yard. Her heart leaped as Wyatt stepped out, his expression unreadable. He approached without a word, his boots crunching on the gravel. She stood wiping her hands on her jeans. I'm trying to fix what I broke. Wyatt glanced at the fan, then took the screwdriver from her gently. You're using the wrong one. You'll strip the threads. Relief flooded her, mixed with nervousness. As he worked beside her, the silence wasn't tense but thoughtful. Finally, he straightened. Let's start over. Okay, no more hiding. She nodded, meeting his eyes. I'm Amelia Grace, the one who learned to lie just to feel loved like a normal person. But now, I just want to love you as me. From that day forward, Wyatt's returns wove into the fabric of the farm like the steady rhythm of the seasons. He arrived without fanfare, his truck pulling up at dawn with a fresh set of tools or a bundle of wire for the fences. Amelia rose earlier than she ever had in the city, her hands growing accustomed to the grit of work as she joined him, learning to oil hinges, till small patches of soil and plant rows of wildflowers along the porch. It wasn't obligation that drove her. It was the quiet pull of understanding his world piece by rusted piece. Mornings began with simple acts, her brewing coffee in the old percolator, handing him a mug as steam curled in the cool air. He would sip it slowly, nodding approval. Not as fancy as city brews, he'd say, but warmer somehow. Because it's made with heart, she'd reply, echoing his earlier words, and they'd share a glance that lingered just a moment longer each time. Afternoons found them on the porch, the sun slanting through the trees as they talked, not the guarded exchanges of before, but open, unfiltered truths. Amelia spoke of her motherless childhood, the hollow evenings in high-rise apartments where she felt like a shadow in her father's empire. Wyatt shared the weight of his final embrace with his brother before deployment, the guilt that lingered like shrapnel in his soul. Tears came sometimes, hers silent and his restrained, but they flowed without shame, leaving behind a calm that settled like dew on the fields. You afraid I'll lie again? She asked one evening, her voice soft. He met her eyes steadily. No, the woman in front of me today isn't hiding anymore. One Sunday morning, Amelia woke to find a small wooden box on the kitchen table, its surface smooth from sanding. Inside lay a bracelet carved from a scrap of the tractor's old wooden frame, the grain polished to a warm sheen. A note was tucked beside it. I don't promise no arguments. I don't promise we'll never tire. I just promise I won't walk away if you don't push me out. Wyatt. She slipped it onto her wrist, the wood cool against her skin, and felt a resolve solidify. It wasn't diamonds or gold. It was real, born from the very machine that had brought them together. That resolve carried her to action. Amelia dialed her New York office, her voice firm as she canceled the sale contract. The farm stays intact, she declared. I'm not dividing it up. She transformed the property not into profit, but purpose, opening a free vocational program for the town's youth, teaching basic mechanics and farming skills. Wyatt became the lead instructor, guiding teenagers through engine rebuilds and crop planning, his patients drawing them in. Amelia handled the logistics, serving coffee and keeping records, finding joy in the chatter of young voices filling the barn. One winter evening, as the first snow dusted the ground like powdered sugar, they prepared dinner in the warm kitchen. Amelia noticed Wyatt setting 3 places at the table. Why 3? She asked, puzzled. It's just us. He turned to her, his hand resting gently on her arm. Because next year there might be a 3rd, if you're willing to hold on to something new starting between us. Understanding dawned, and she smiled through glistening eyes, pulling the third chair closer. Then let's hold on to it. No need to wait for next year. They sat together that night, sharing a simple meal amid the glow of lantern light, the farm alive with possibility. It wasn't a grand ending with vows or crowds, just two people who had deceived and hurt, now choosing truth in the quiet moments. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light, a reminder that some things once mended ran stronger than before.